time and ending on time. And we will not break that tradition tonight. So for those that have joined, welcome. I'm Adrienne Lance Lucas, president of the National Alumni Association of Spelman College for the Atlanta chapter. And we're excited to have you here. And I am just beaming coming off of this week with a new president and our first female vice president. I know all of you are doing the same. And it also gives us, yes, go ahead and clap, wave, and if you had some bells, do all of that. And we were talking about just the power of what was shown on Wednesday, and that celebratory moment with even the little Amanda Gorman that was there. And as women, I know that we all celebrate women, and we know that we are going to see her again in the future. So everything that we're doing here at Spelman, we're on the right track. And part of what we're doing is getting our financial house in order. So tonight is our 5th session for what would have been our Women's Wealth Building Wednesday, but this is our Financial Friday edition because we all pay attention to the inauguration. And I just want to recap the items that we went over so far because this is our 5th session. So we started out with the state of Black wealth. Then we went into the 3 P's of investing: purpose, principles, and passion. Our 3rd session was on Tax Matters 101. And our 4th session was all about the trusts. And so that one was really impactful. And ladies, I know that many of you have asked us for a list of trust attorneys, and that is coming out. The list is somewhat complete. But if you are in the field and would like to throw your business or your name into the hat to share with our sisters, Robin Stokes, our communication liaison, will be sending out another request for you to let us know if that is your field so that we can make sure that we're not only receiving the information, but we're also able to implement and execute upon the things that they are putting in our midst. So tonight, we will get started. Again, this session is on the estate planning basics. And we are welcomed by Tiffany Eubank Saunders, who's a managing director with Bank of America. And she is joined by Wendy Gatlin, who is a senior wealth building specialist and a senior vice president with Bank of America. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. And Wendy, you just let me know when you're ready to go to your slides, and we will start the evening that way. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking time to spend your Friday evening. You could be a ton of places, but I appreciate you taking some time to really put yourself first in your finances. So I appreciate the time, and thank you for having me as a guest. So I understand that you all have been on a journey, a financial journey. And a lot of you last month had some basics around trust, but also entailed financial planning. So today, while I will and can answer questions about estate planning, I'm going to put a little emphasis on retirement planning, some things that we need to be doing to make sure, we are ready for that. And so I'm going to walk through just sort of a journey of retirement planning, but also want to sort of bring it back to the estate planning, topics from last month. And so if you have any questions, please stop me. Let's discuss them. If anything's unclear, but I do think that there are some items that will be helpful as you think about not only your estate planning, but also your retirement planning, because, those are the assets that you're probably going to leave. And if you're everyday working person, most of your assets that you've been saving, hopefully been saving are, maybe a large part of might be retirement assets. So I want to walk through that and also touch on a little bit of estate planning. So I'll let you just head on through to the first page past the table of contents. I think that's page 4. So I want to kind of bring this, there you go. So I know people always say, oh, it's never too late to start thinking about retirement. My comment is never too early. So I think we need to get out of the mindset of like, oh, we've got time to do this. You don't have time, unless unlike me, how many years you're going to walk and grace this earth. So I want us to get in the mindset of it's never too early to start thinking about retirement. It's never too early to start thinking about your estate plan. So you may have learned last month that, there are certain ways your assets will pass at death. One of them will be through, your will. That you set up. Another way would be by operation of law. So for example, if you own property with joint tenants in common with a spouse or joint with rights of survivorship, they automatically pass on according to operation of law. The other way I want to discuss today and focus on is by contract. So what is contract? Contract is anything with a beneficiary designation. So that would be your retirement plan, that would be insurance policies, things of those natures. So it's critically important to understand and have those, beneficiary designation forms set up properly. Because what happens is if you pass away and you've got an ex-spouse or someone else on there that you didn't change the beneficiary designation, the plan participant and the plan provider, and the insurance company must pay out who's named as a beneficiary. So that is absolutely key. So if you had a life event where maybe you had a parent because you were single and you didn't have any kids, you had a parent, but your parent subsequently passed away. You had, as I mentioned before, a spouse or whomever you've named. Now is the time. 2021, COVID has hit. We need to be putting those things, estate plannings, and really planning for our future in order. It's time to take a look at those and make sure that you not only have the primary beneficiaries of whom you want those assets to go to, but also contingent beneficiaries. So contingent beneficiaries are who would pass away if the first person is deceased. For example, let's just say, you named a spouse and that spouse has, passed away, but you haven't got a chance or around to changing those beneficiary designations. The insurance company, the retirement plan is going to look to the contingent beneficiary and pay those out that way. So hopefully that's pretty clear and you all are up on that and know that. But it's really also important time just to review. It's the beginning of the year, fresh start. Let's review. If you don't have an estate plan, let's work on getting one. The first thing I always tell people that, people say, well, I got time. I don't have, much assets. Oh, or some people say, well, I do have assets. I just haven't, got around to the time to do that. It is keenly important that we prepare for, not only our children, but our community. There's some of us are so involved in, our communities and our families, and we just do such a favor when our family is grieving at the time to have our financial matters in order instead of running around trying to figure out who gets what and where it goes. Mm-hmm. And I always tell my clients, you have an estate plan, whether or not you know it or not. It's called your state government. Okay. So your state intestacy laws determine how your assets pass away. And you'd be surprised, depending on where you live, it's not always, oh, well, my children will get it. Sometimes, oh, my spouse will get it. Sometimes based on the intestate laws, meaning when you die without a will, it will have it go to beneficiaries, meaning family members that you can't stand, you don't even talk to, you don't know, but that's where it's going. So that's why it's keenly important to be up on your estate plan, have one, at least a will. And then for many of us have children, it's important to have a will because that will determines who will be, the legal guardian of your children should you pass away. And so I think that is very important. The person that you have handling your estate and your money may not be the same person that you want raising your children. And they don't have to be, right? So that's something to think about. But hopefully last month, we talked a lot about trust and how to protect those. So just wanted to focus on retirement planning today. Tiffany, you want to say something. Did you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to underscore the fact. I mean, the reality is, while we always knew this, the last several months of COVID and the disproportionate impact that it's had on our community has really brought this to the forefront. And Wendy and I could each tell you horror stories for clients and even colleagues, quite candidly, who were putting this off until the future, and then unfortunately were stricken and ended up being infected with the virus. And unfortunately, some of those folks succumbed to their illness and did not have this type of information this type of designation in place. And so, like Wendy said, now is the time. We are really busy during this time of year every year, but we are super busy right now for two reasons. One is because there is a new administration, and there's a lot of anticipation around changes in the law that will impact our clients and their wealth from a tax perspective and a policy perspective. So that's one of the reasons that a lot of change is occurring now. And if you speak to any of the attorneys that set up, trusts and wills and estate plans, I mean, they will tell you that they are super busy right now because of that change. But two, they're also busy because people and their mortality has hit them in the face over the last several months with COVID-19, and with no real relief in sight, it continues to be top of mind and what keeps many of our clients up at night in terms of not having their documents in order, to Wendy's point, not having their beneficiaries updated from when they first started working to, a couple of years later, now that they've got other folks that they want to consider. And so I would just encourage you ladies to please, please, please take the time, make the time over the course of the next couple of weeks, no more than 30 days, to take the tips that Wendy is going to share in terms of what we need to do to get our house in order and make that a priority as we move into 2021.
Yeah, and it's not fun, right? Nobody wants to talk about their mortality, but it's a serious matter. I'll just say, you all know, we as Black women are getting more educated than anybody else on this planet over the last 20 years. We are highly educated. We are moving into different, businesses and companies we're founding and running, and different corporations. And a lot of us have wealth that we need to plan for. And it is important to just leave the next generation, better than you were if you can. And so I think it's just a wonderful way to protect your children, your nieces and nephews, whomever. If you have no children, no nieces and nephews, just if you want to impact your community, there are ways and things in your community that you can, leave money to in all kinds of ways to benefit and make the world a better place. So it's important. And, we talk about numbers, but really your estate plan is a way to pass your values down. And so don't miss out on a chance to pass your values down to whomever. And have that in order. So that's, as Tiffany said, make that a check mark, to pull everything out, take a look at it. For those of you who are already on top of it, say, Wendy, you're too late. I already have an estate plan. Well, look at it, because as Tiffany mentioned, there may be some changes in the tax laws that may, benefit you, or you may need to think about. And so pull your documents out and have them reviewed, with your financial advisor or with your attorney. We won't beat that to death, but we just want to make sure that you understand it's important. And I'm sure you have, and just make that a priority. Make yourself a priority for 2021. So if you'll move on just to the next page, I want to focus on, it's never too early to start planning for your retirement. I mean, just the compound and the years of just being in the market, being invested, it's just, you can't beat it. The earlier you start, the better. Yes, I realize that some people say, well, you know what, Wendy, I'm just young and I'm just starting out. Just put away what you can, as much as you can. And I just want to share that retirement is changing. Like, that word it used to be a cessation of work, right? When you retire, you're no longer working. There are some of you on this phone that will never stop working, right? You love what you do, or you have a passion around what you're doing, and you can't even imagine stop what you're doing. So retirement might look to you as, I love what I do, but I no longer do it for the company or the person I used to do it for. I now do it in another manner. So it just gives you options. And the more you plan, more you save for your retirement, structure your retirement, and in your state, just give you options. And so I want to talk about, just really focusing on planning early. And then for some of you, we have a wide range of backgrounds and, financial situations. Just, where do you start? And so I want to just I like to break it down into, buckets. So if you're planning for retirement, let's first start at the easy, low-lying fruit. If your company has a retirement plan, let's focus right there. Start with that, and then it's sort of just move on over to the one once you've done all that and say, Wendy, done, cover. Let's move on to next and say, okay, what else could I be doing? If you know, do you have an IRA? If not, let's set up one. Let's add to that. If you say, Wendy, got it, funded that, what else can I do? Then now you need to look at fund and investment accounts that you can build wealth, that you can make other investments, whether it's real estate, whether it's, you know, just funding, you know, stocks and bonds, whatever it is. But let's sort of just go through the basics tonight about how to build that sort of bridge to financial security and peacefulness. So let's just talk about starting early. Move to the next page, please. So I just want to, you know, kind of highlight this. There's a difference between saving in a retirement plan and just saving in your investment account or in your, you know, any other type of taxable account. The power of tax deferred compounding cannot be overlooked. When you are allowed to put money away in a tax deferred retirement account, when we say tax deferred, it's untouched by taxes until you take the money out. And so the ability to put money away, even small amounts of money, make a difference when you're putting in a vehicle that allows it to grow tax deferred as opposed to taxable. So just if you sort of just take this, and we're taking just a small amount of money and just assuming, all right, you know, this year, you know, you can put in $6,000 to an IRA, and you say, well, Wendy, you know, why do I need to set up an IRA? I already put $6,000 in my taxable account. I want to be able to get to it when I can. If you need that, great. But if you haven't set up for retirement, let's start and just kind of look at the difference. Just here on this slide, I'm taking just a small amount, $6,000, and assuming you started just putting that away in an IRA, and you did the same thing, $6,000 into an investment account. And you just kind of compare one on the left, I mean, in the center, the IRA value is growing literally untouched by taxes. And the one on the right is being taxed every single year as you earn dividends and interest and things of that nature. It's being taxed. And just in a small amount, just putting $6,000 a year, if you look in the middle of the slide, just because the IRA was never touched by taxes, you already have $47,000 more in that vehicle if you had taken that same amount of money and put it, put it in another vehicle. And so I just kind of want to highlight, I know you all know this, but just highlight the benefit of saving on a tax deferred basis. If you turn to the next slide, I just want to just focus on, something else with the tax deferred. If your company is offering a match, I don't care what it is. They could be matching 2%. They could be doing 50%. They could be doing whatever amount they're doing. You need to contribute at least to the match, because you're giving away free money. If they tell you they're going to match, 3%, up to 3% of your salary, and they're going to match it. So if you can put 3% of your salary in there, they're going to match it. You cannot leave that on the table. So between the tax deferral nature of assets growing untouched by taxes and the additional contribution that your company will put on, you just cannot, it cannot underscore what that looks like. So here's my little chart to say, where do you begin? And like I always tell everybody, 401k or 403b, whatever your employer offers. If you're self-employed, let's look at a self-employment plan. We'll discuss those in a little bit. Then you go into, okay, we filled those buckets, and I still have money because, I'm a Black woman, I'm doing it. So I need to fill my IRA bucket. And they say, oh, I still have some money and I still have some savings, and say, oh, well, let's get a savings goal in your taxable bucket. So this is the way you should be looking at saving for your finances. Now, you may be at a point where you're just, you only can fill your one bucket, your 401k bucket. That is fine. Fill it, maximize it as much as you possibly can. Right now, you can contribute up to $19,500 into a 401k. If your company is matching that, wonderful, let them match it. And if that's, you say, Wendy, that's all I can do. That's it. If you do nothing else, just fill that first bucket. And as your resources allow, you should be moving across the spectrum, trying to fill all of them. I'm just going to stop here, just ask any questions or comments. Does somebody have a different strategy they want to share? They disagree? Because, some people disagree with, funding retirement plans. They think they should be saving in other aspects and doing some other things. And so just want to stop there to see if anybody had any questions about or wanted to share their strategy for saving for retirement. None? Okay. Well, let's move on and look at page 10. So 10, let's look at what you have at work. So, I think that's what you should first do. If you have not gone on to your company's, Workday website, whatever it is, let's find out where it is, make sure you're contributing, and find out what the employer match is. Just so you are aware, for those of you closer to retirement, it used to be at age 70 and a half, you'd have to take your IRA and start taking distributions out of that. In December of 29, that has been moved to age 72. So you have a little bit more time, you can leave those assets in those retirement plans. So if you want to, retire at 65 and you want to continue to let those assets to grow, you got additional 7 more years now that those can grow tax deferred. It would be wonderful if you have, saved appropriately for your taxable accounts. You can live off of those and take those for that period of time before you have to hit into your traditional accounts. So just want to highlight that 19,500 is the max. If you're over 50, you have a catch-up contribution. So you can do a catch-up contribution of $6,500. So that's a total of $26,000 you can put away. So just take advantage of what you can. And remember that when you contribute to your retirement plans through work, that is actually moving your taxable income down. So you're actually saving taxes because that comes off before, it's a pre-tax deduction. So it brings down your taxable income. So while you may be saying, oh, I'm bringing home less, it is saving you some on taxes. So just want to highlight that. Let's move on to just kind of focus on some of the other aspects of planning. Let's look at employer matches. I want to hammer this point home. Can we turn to page 13? So let's look at employer matches. So if you look over here on the left-hand side, we've taken assuming that you earn $100,000 a year and your employer offers a match to match your contributions to your 401k up to 3% of your salary. So that means $3,000 your employer will continue to contribute. You can contribute $3,000 in your employer. So just to highlight, just contributing just as much as the match. You should be contributing more, hopefully, but if you can just do the match. So on the left-hand side, you can look at, you put in $15,000 over the course of 5 years, and you look all the way down 20 years, you put in 60. Your employer has put in, another 60. Future value of the account is 190. Just assuming some growth on there. If your employer had put nothing, your balance would have been 99,198. Look right above that. Just by them contributing, it didn't cost you anything. They just dumped it in your account because you contributed. You got a whole $100,000 more. So this sort of, if you look over to the right-hand side and we assume that you're contributing the max that you can contribute, which is the 19.5 right now, and you have a disciplined saving plan that's automatically coming out, and your employer is still matching, that's 3%. You're not going to get any more, but you are now contributing more because you can. Look at the difference on the right-hand side between, what your balance would be at 727, as a balance, as opposed to if you're, without the employer match, should have been 628. So it makes a difference. I do want you to look at this. If you're doing this, great, wonderful. If you know somebody who's not, like I hear a lot of people say, well, I just don't contribute to my plan. I just don't want to do that. I'm just saving my money, all that type of stuff. Can encourage them to at least contribute the max and not give a free money. I think I've hammered that point enough alone. For those of you on the phone and say, hey, I'm self-employed. Help me out, Wendy. What should I be doing? And so if you turn to page 16, just want to, discuss some things that you could be doing. So some of the easy things that you could set up that are, don't cost a lot of money to set up. You don't need a lot of, plans or whatever, or require lots of legal bills and expenses to set them up. If you're self-employed, you can set up something called a SEP. A simplified employee pension is really what it stands for, or a simple account, which is a savings incentive match plan for employees. And so that's a way for you to set up a plan for you and even some of, your employees. And so I would encourage you, don't forget about, many times when you're growing and you're in your business and you're trying to grow it, you forget about the fact that, you need to be saving for your retirement as well. So think about that. Make sure that you do some, speak with your CPA, because your CPA is going to be the one that lets you know what amount based on your business income you can contribute. So I just want you all to think about that. The SEP is a little different in that you can contribute up to $58,000 And it's based on your percentage of your income of your business. So you can contribute up to 58,000. And then, when you turn 50 and over, you can do a $6,500 catch up. So just remember, if you turn 50 or close to 50, make sure you go into your employer plans, make sure you go to your own self-employed plan and contribute the match, because now you got an extra bonus to help you save for retirement. So just want to kind of discuss some of those. I'm not going to go too far in the weeds of the plan, but just want to turn it to the next page and just share some of, on page 17, just share some of the benefits of a SEP, for example, which is that simplified employee pension plan. One of the things is that it's a higher contribution limit than other IRAs and qualified plans. So if you say, well, I'm putting in 58,000, Wendy, but if you were working for somebody, you could only put in 19.5. So it's the same, tax deferred growth. So just by having your own business and structuring and having enough revenue, you can contribute, more. One of the other things are SEPs are really easy to maintain. There's no ongoing IRS filing reports that most plans have. And so want to keenly suggest and say you look into those plans, because they're simple to set up. They don't require any ongoing. And you continue to contribute and assume the risk, of course, of investing those. But I just wanted to highlight for those who are self-employed. Any questions or comments for anybody that's self-employed on the line may have in reference to any of these plans? Okay.
Wendy, I have a question.
Sure.
I'll put one out there for
Sure.
those that are self-employed. So there are now some online savings and investment, apps that you can use now. I know a popular one is Robinhood.
Mhm.
I know for those that are self-employed, I've heard people using Wealthfront, etc. Can you talk just a little bit about the differences? Because some seem to have preset financial managers, and everything kind of goes into a group investment based on the allocations that you have. But if you can help self-employed folks kind of understand the differences and
Mhm.
why they may choose an app versus going to an individual financial advisor for that.
Yeah, so I think it should anyway largely depend on the size of your business, right? So if you are just starting out and you have some seed money in a business and you say, well, look, I'm not quite ready at the level to really set up a full plan for employees and for myself, I might be able to start out on some of these apps where it allows me to start an account, put something away. I would say if you have a business and you're making, substantial, revenue, you probably should be going to an individual who set up a plan for you and your employees. There are just so many nuances to retirement planning that you want to be thinking about. There are some benefits that allow you to structure your plan, such that, certain individuals in the business would have, some additional benefits because they're key people in your organization. You can set up the plan to incentivize people to stay and grow with your business. And so that stuff is not being provided through an app. You need to have a hands-on person. But I think that, if you are just starting out with a business and you are really trying to, manage your business, cash flow is going back into the business. Some of those apps, are good apps to start out, but I definitely think they should not be they could be a starting point, but not necessarily where you're going to continue to grow the wealth
Right.
for your retirement assets.
Right.
So, but I do know that a lot of people are starting businesses. They like that. They like the idea that it's through an app. They're learning. They kind of can set it and forget it. I don't like that model, set it and forget it, because I think you need to be involved in your finances and you need to understand your retirement plan. And so for me, I personally, not just because I work for a bank, but just because I just think that when there's some things you can set and forget, but a retirement plan, particularly if you're self-employed, is not one. You need to have someone tracking to make sure you're saving enough, make
That's
sure
right.
the asset allocation is appropriate for, when you want to retire. There's so much nuances that go into that. But I understand that for smaller businesses, people like that as an entryway. And I say, better do that than nothing, right? So
Yeah.
if that's your entryway to saving for retirement, go for it.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add to that, I think Wendy's point is a good one, because what we find oftentimes is people will be disciplined to start or at least engage in savings for retirement. But to Wendy's point, they'll kind of set it up and then just leave it alone and forget about it. And by the time they get to us, what we uncover is, one, that the savings could have been accelerated if they hadn't just left it alone, and if they actually made it a practice to at least annually. I mean, our clients, we typically sit down with our clients quarterly and talk about their savings and their wealth, and we make changes all the time. But at least annually, you want to make that a practice. And if, a lot of people will marry it up with their annual taxes, right? They'll just kind of create a routine and say, okay, every year when I file my taxes and I have my returns and all my information, I'm going to use that as an opportunity to set up with my advisor and talk about what I'm doing or what I may need to do that's a little bit different, so that I can make sure that I'm in a better place next year. The other thing I'd say is, a lot of people ask us, well, at what point should we engage an advisor? At what level of wealth should we engage an advisor? Honestly, it's a personal decision, but a rule of thumb that a lot of portfolio managers or investment managers will tell you is, if you're hitting the $100,000 mark in terms of savings, and it can be, to Wendy's point, in a 401k, right? So those are investments, those are in savings that you have. If you've hit that threshold, if you pull out your savings and you see that you've hit 100,000 or more, you probably could very, very well use the advice and experience of an individual professional, so that they can help you take that 100,000 and accelerate the savings much quicker than you're going to if you are leveraging a predetermined app structure, like to your point, Adrienne, or if you're just setting it up and sitting it to the side and not paying attention to it anymore. Again, it's a personal preference, but that's a rule of thumb that if you talk to a lot of investment managers, even ones of ultra high net worth, people who are managing hundreds of millions of dollars for some of our clients, even they will say, if you get to about $100,000 worth of savings that you're going to invest for your future, you probably need and deserve at that point, so that you can continue to grow. You probably need to have the experience and expertise of someone who's always watching that money for you and constantly taking advantage of opportunities to expedite the growth of the investment.
Yeah, and as Stephanie just said, I mean, you think about it. If you're just even if you're new to the workforce and you maxed out your 401k at 19.5, in 5 years you should have at least $100,000. If you have employer match, you'd have more, and if you'd have some growth on that portfolio. So it's really, I mean, the earlier the better. $100,000 is nice, is like a rule of thumb. But I even say, like, if there is an opportunity through your employer to speak with one of the employee benefits providers, and you have, you're just starting out and you've got 50,000 or you've got 20,000 and a plan, please talk to someone because they're going to be able to give you some ideas of what forward-looking, expectations are in the market, things that you may not be keeping up with. Right now, under the new administration, there's a lot of talk about infrastructure. Last year was everything about tech. Everybody went home to work. Everybody started doing things online. So there was a lot of focus on tech. Tech stocks are booming. Not to say tech stocks are not still booming, but typically, if you just look at the stock market, the companies that were on top 10 years ago are not the same companies that are on top 10 years later. So if you set up this model where you think, oh yeah, I'm going to invest in this, that, and the other, and you're saying, on the beginning of 2021, 10 years from now, if you're not looking and being advised properly, that money may not be growing, because those things that were, or company projections that you were looking at in 2021, the world has changed so much, and you may have missed out on an opportunity to increase your assets. So
That's right.
please, even if you don't have the 100,000 and you have the opportunity to speak to someone through your investments, whether it's a self-directed, on our Merrill Edge platform, we have a self-directed plan where you can go in, you can set up an investment account, but you still have access to the material and someone to speak to if you need to, in reference to an asset allocation. And I want to point out, we're focusing on savings, but also it's keenly important to know the asset allocation. Once I have the money in the plan, where and how should I be investing this money? And so just if you take any 10-year period in the stock market, it has done well for you as a long-term investor if you're putting money away to be in the stock market. I know a lot of people are scared. They don't want to lose their money and they say, oh, I'm going to put some bonds. I'm going to do this. I mean, bonds right now are paying next to nothing. Interest rates are low.
Right.
So if you had a retirement plan that you set up 10 years ago or 20 years ago and you're not looking at it and it's keenly and heavily weighted to bonds and you're trying to retire in the next 5 to 10 years, you need to switch that because you are not going to get to your goals earning 1 and 2% interest. And so it's important to also pay attention to your asset allocation. And that is the choices of where to invest your money. And if nothing else, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, I would urge you to speak with someone to assist you with doing that. But those other platforms, Robin, all of those are good entry-level platforms, but because they can often lull you into not paying attention to your assets and be an active participant, I like to choose, to urge people just to have somebody look at their investments. So go ahead.
Hey,
Tiff,
Wendy, real quick. I was just going to interject. Well, first of all, I want whatever Angie's drinking. I want some of that because that looks really good on a Friday evening. And secondly, I just wanted to underscore your point about there's free information out there and we just have to be willing to ask for it. To Wendy's point, if you've got a Bank of America Merrill Edge account, which is our self-directed account, we talked about that back during our first session that we had back in October or September. That account, even though you're managing your investments, you're setting them up, you do it with the assistance over the phone of an actual advisor. And they can actually help you in terms of making some decisions about what makes sense for you short-term versus long-term and ongoing, because they are there at your beck and call, at your assistance. There's no maximum to the number of times you can call in. You can call in and get the information that you want. And typically that's when you're at a lower level of investing or you're just getting started out. But whether it's Bank of America or any other bank or investment firm that you've got an account with, make sure that you inquire about, can you call to get services? Can you get information and get the advice over the phone? Probably not in person, but over the phone. And it's not a dedicated advisor. It's, whoever happens to pick up that call at the time, but that's fine because they're all registered and they're all very capable of providing that information. Find out where you call and then make it a practice to call in and just go over your portfolio with the person that your bank has hired to do that for you. That's a service that you pay for when you pay fees or commissions, and you should feel completely free to leverage that service frequently until you get to the point where you kind of learn or create your own go-to-market strategy around your investments. And oftentimes we don't do that, especially people of color, women of color, because one, we don't know that we have the opportunity, and two, we're a little bit intimidated because we don't know what we don't know. And we're here to say, that's in your mind. It's not anything that should control how you move forward. And you're really selling yourself short in terms of maximizing your growth potential when you don't reach out and leverage those resources.
Exactly. Well said. Well said. And another thing that you have on those type of resources are retirement calculators, right? So if you say, like, I don't even know what I should be saving for retirement, what's nice about those, those platforms is that you can punch in and say, look, this is what I have saved. This is what, this is the age I want to retire. And they can kind of direct you to say, yeah, you're on a good savings, you're good. Or no, oops, you need to start saving this much each year, and it helps you adjust your savings. So a lot of good information. Don't think because you don't have an advisor that you can't, manage your assets. Or like Tiffany said, there's a lot of information out there from a technology standpoint, but also just resources for you to learn. So want to remind you of that. The other thing I don't want to be remiss and not to talk about, because I know this has been talked about a lot in the news. Let's turn to page 20. Let's do 23. No, 24. 23. No, sorry, 24.
Before
Let's
you
start
go
there.
on, Wendy, I
Sure.
think we have a question from
Sure.
Yeah.
Benita. If you want to unmute yourself.
Sure.
Okay, and I just typed it in the chat.
I'm sorry.
I was just trying to quickly do it, but thank you, ladies, for your time this evening. Well, just two quick questions. My first question is, if you're employed and you also have a business, can you have a 401k and the SEP at the same time? And my second question is, do you have a resource listing of trustworthy financial advisors, maybe in the Atlanta, Georgia area? Because for me, it's hard to kind of trust. I know I need an advisor, but I've been doing everything myself. But if you could refer one, if not now, in the future, that would be great.
Sure. So that's a great question, Benita, and the answer is yes to both. Yes, you can have both. So that's the nice thing about being self-employed. You can have a 401k, that's your day job, and you can contribute to a 401k. You can also, a lot of people, for example, who work regular, 9 to 5s may have a consultant business where they do speaking engagements or something else. And so if you're collecting that money and you're self-employed, based on the revenue of your business, you'll have to, ask your CPA, or when you calculate your tax return, you'll be able to find out what your maximum you can contribute to the SEP IRA. But yes, you can have both. And yes, we will put you in touch with some advisors. So
yes,
that's not a problem.
We have some phenomenal female advisors, actually Black female advisors in the Atlanta market. So we can certainly pass that information on to Adrienne so that she can share it with you all, and we'll give you several, because right. I mean, you all, if you were able to listen in on some of our prior sessions, we are firm believers that your advisors need to earn your business just like everybody else, and so you should always make sure that you speak to a couple of different folks whenever you're trying to determine who should manage your money or who should help you on your wealth journey, because you want to be comfortable with that person. And to the extent or to the point of what was made before, you want to trust who that is. And you can only do that after you speak to a couple of different folks and determine who has the same perspective as you do, and somebody that you can really form a good relationship with. So we will forward those names.
Great question. But yes, if you're self-employed, you can, do your calculation and you can contribute to both. The other thing I wanted to highlight, because I think a lot of company plans are having a Roth feature of their plans. And I know a lot of people give me a lot of questions about, should be setting up a Roth 401k, a Roth IRA. What's the difference between that and a traditional? So I'm going to keep this really high level, but the Roth is a way that you contribute to after-tax dollars. Now, they're not pre-tax. They don't come down off of your taxable income. After-tax dollars to your plan. And the benefit of doing that is that when you turn 72 now, you can withdraw all the money out tax-free. And so what the whole idea is to put away as much money as you can, of course, but you put them away now and the earnings and everything grow tax-free. Caveat there, I would just want to say, is that it's limited based on your salaries. So if you're a high earner, single or, married, you're limited, of the amount that you can, if you can contribute. And so the amount change every year. I think right now it's for a single person might be $168,000. If you make more than 168 or 173, somewhere around that, you can't contribute to the Roth feature. But that's some way to think about that. When we talk about estate planning, I'm going to just share this just little idea that I've done with clients, but also done myself. So even though you may not be able to contribute to a Roth IRA, let's just say you make too much money, you can't contribute, your taxable income is above the limits. If you have a traditional IRA someplace else, how would you might have one? I had a 401k from a prior employer, you rolled it over into an IRA when you left, or you may have just funded a traditional IRA over time. We want to make sure you're secure, of course, but a nice way to really start to estate plan would be that if you have a traditional IRA, you could take a small amount each year and decide that you're going to convert that to a Roth IRA. What it requires that you would say, I'm just picking a number, $5,000 out of my traditional IRA. I can't contribute to a Roth, but I want it to be in a Roth bucket. I'm going to contribute convert $5,000 out of my traditional IRA, and I'm going to move it to a Roth IRA. And you keep doing that over time. Those assets are yours and available for you to take if you need them at retirement or as a part of your retirement. But the nice thing about that is that they continue to grow untouched by taxes over your life expectancy. And they're a great way to pass down assets, to your children, a bucket of assets that you never have to take a requirement of distribution from a Roth IRA, like a traditional IRA at 72, you have to take them out. You do not have to do that with the Roth. So you could decide, oh, wow, I can take a few $1,000s each month, each year and start funding this Roth IRA. If you need it for your retirement, great. If you don't, imagine if you started doing this, at 40, at 45, and you died at 85 or 90, and you've been doing this and putting away this money in this Roth IRA. It has grown so, you literally don't have to take any requirement of distribution. It's grown untouched by taxes. It's a great estate planning tool to really pass down to your children, because what I look at is you've already sort of front loaded their retirement, right? You've given them a bucket towards their retirement that then they will inherit and have, and will not be, be required to, pay taxes on anything but, the earnings, all that base that you put in, is theirs. And so that's just something to think about as you look at estate planning. That's another strategy and a benefit of talking to an advisor. So if you have one and, you feel like you're on a good savings track for your own retirement, ask your advisor about should you convert a portion of your traditional IRA to a Roth, and you should be able to, whatever amounts you convert, you should be able to pay the taxes out of your non-IRA assets. So that's why it's keenly important to talk to, an advisor to make sure that's good for you. But another great way, Roth IRA is a great vehicle to pass down assets to the next generation. Mm-hmm. Any questions on that before, we want to move on? I want to go through the spectrum of, your employer plans, self-employment plans, then let's look at Roth and traditional IRAs, and then move on to, all right, we've got all those bucketfuls. What should we be doing next? And so if we go down, I think 2 more pages, Adrian. Let me stop there and just talk about this. A lot of people, want to tap their 401ks and IRAs the minute there's some financial hardship, or they want to do certain things in their lives, whether it's, buy a home or different things. So what I would like to say about this is I've had this question so many times. Your IRA or your 401k really should be, as much as possible, saved for retirement, right? If you get to retirement and you've not saved well for retirement, there's nobody that's going to help you with that. You don't want to live off your children, have your children support you. So really take care of yourself. I know we as women, we want to take care of our children, our nieces, our nephews. Some of us are taking financially responsible for our parents. Just know that, if you are taking assets out of your retirement plan before 59 and a half, you are paying a 10% penalty on top of having to include whatever you took out of that plan as part of your income and paying taxes. That is a hefty penalty. If you needed, $50,000 or $20,000, to take money out and then pay a 10% plus tax, that's a hefty penalty. So just please be careful about doing that. There are certain exemptions for early distributions. Life happens. that you can, take from, your IRA to avoid the early withdrawal penalty. You'll still pay the taxes, but, there's a list on this page. I just wanted you all to see. And some of them, if you have to take a distribution, as a deceased IRA owner, like, you inherited one, if you become disabled, if you have to make a distribution, unfortunately, because you're going through a divorce and there's a domestic relations order that you have to distribute out. There's certain usage for qualified education expenses, first-time home buyers, things of that nature. If you leave your job after 55, you can usually take something out of a 401k. Just be mindful of that, going to that bucket to really take from your retirement assets. Hopefully we're building these bucket of assets and you do have a taxable bucket. And so that's where you really need to be taken before you go to these assets here. So I just wanted to stop on that. Any questions about the distributions? Now, you're not required to take a distribution until you're 72, but once you're over 59 and a half, you can access. So if you want to retire at 60 or 62, you have access to these assets without penalty, but you're not required to make a distribution out of them until age 72 now based on law. So I just wanted to highlight that. All right.
Wendy,
So,
I want to ask a question.
Sure.
On the qualifications for taking some of those funds to pay for higher education expenses. What are the stipulations in order to qualify without penalty?
All right. Well, first of all, I'll say that just make this really clear. You can only do this, for an IRA. So if you were thinking about let's just say you didn't have an IRA, you had a 401k. I want to be clear that you cannot do that from a 401k. But if you have an IRA, and they were used, and it says there certain qualified higher education expenses. So usually it's required for a vocational or four-year school. You can't decide truly higher education. Or some of those are the basic requirement that you take them. It's typically not for things like to get a computer or books. Usually it's tuition, but there's some ways when you look in the detailed rules that you may be able to qualify. Typically it's not housing. So if you you need room and board, to stay on campus, it's usually the core expenses of tuition. And I just want to say a caveat that it's just from an IRA. You cannot take that out from your 401k. So just want to be clear on that.
Thank you, Wendy, because Spelman is so expensive. And I know that there are a lot of folks in here planning for their children to pay for their children's education. And that was a stipulation that I think might apply to several.
And I'm, you have to do what you have to do. But I'm just so not a proponent of taking from your retirement plan to pay. If at all possible, and if you have, good credit, or if your children can get loans, or if you can get one, just touching your 401k and pulling money out that's required for you to retire. I just think there's different ways to be able to come up with the funds if you don't have to tap into your retirement to pay for education. I mean, your kids have so many more years to live and be on this planet to make money. Better, if you have to bear the burden of a student loan, we try not to, but it's better for them to bear it because they have many more years to be able to earn money and pay it back than us at our late age in retirement. We're taking money from our retirement account to fund those. And so just as a philosophical difference, I always tell clients, just in friends and family, that should be the last place you go. But I realize that's hardship, right? So these are sort of some things that, if you had nowhere else to go and you needed to, get your child through, the next semester, you're going to do what you have to do. You're going to take money out of your IRA. But just as a caveat, that's the last place I would say to take. But if it's the only place, I understand. That's not looked at as option A. That could be option way down the list, but hopefully that answers your question. I don't want to encourage that and have people not saving for their retirement because each year they're, pulling money out to pay for college for their children.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, I feel like, everybody has their own idea of what retirement looks different for everybody. As I started the call, I feel like it just gives you options. This is sort of a quote that I love and sort of think of how I view retirement. It's it's a whole new kind of life ahead, full of experiences just waiting to happen. Some call it retirement. I call it bliss. So it's just, able to be able to experience new things. And so you may retire from a job, but, open up a business. that may be what retirement looks like to you, and you need to be planning for that. And so once you have the retirement basics together or retirement plans, I just want to make sure, and I know you all discussed this, earlier on in, your sessions about investments. Just be keenly aware of building wealth outside of your retirement plans. When they finally do have to come out of the retirement plans, they're taxed at ordinary income tax rates. And so you'll be paying taxes on them. It's much easier, as you start to, manage your retirement, to be able to have some assets that you can get to at any time. There's no penalty if you wanted to pull them out. And there's a way to, really manage your tax efficiency by recognizing gains as you go through, investing. And so really want to just encourage you to kind of think of those buckets. I'm going to do my employer plans, what I've maxed out, when I can do that. I'm going to look up setting up a Roth or a traditional IRA. If I'm self-employed, I'm going to set up a SEP or a simple. And then once I have all those buckets full, I'm going to work with a retirement calculator if I don't have an advisor. I'm going to work with an advisor and say, what else do I need to be putting away for retirement? And that should go in your taxable investment bucket. Which is, your investment bucket that is non-retirement, that you use to save money, invest in the market. And then if there's an opportunity, you want to, invest in real estate. You may be using some of those funds to, fund an investment in real estate. But I really do think that you should really focus on, for a peaceful retirement, we really should be looking at all of those buckets. As I mentioned, we are highly educated. We're doing very well in a lot of industries and a lot of our own businesses. Really be thinking about yourself and just doing that continuum of saving for retirement, and whatever retirement looks like. It's not necessarily a cessation from work. It could just be an option to move into different experiences. So I'm going to stop there because we're coming up on time, but just wanted to see if anybody had any questions or thoughts, and happy to answer any of those. Okay.
Any questions? Raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourself.
And hopefully this is just, helpful for you to, for some of us to just, just want to get going. Hopefully this is a jump start for 2021 to just say, look, I need to look at stuff. I need to make sure I'm on track for retirement, whatever that is. And, if you're close to retirement, really be you're looking at it sharply and estimating where you are as far as reaching your retirement goals. And so please do that.
Angie,
Well, and the other thing,
I think, Angie, you have your hand up?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a little birdie whispering in my ear. I'm sorry. So I hope I get the question right. If the company's contributing to the SEP, can you also contribute to the SEP individually?
Right. So you're self-employed. So the business, you are the business, you're the self-employed person. So what you're going to do is a calculation on your revenue. And so based on the revenue, let's just pick a number, you can contribute $50,000. The money really is coming from you. And so it is, since you're self-employed, it is you contributing to the SEP IRA. There are other full-fledged retirement plans that you can set up. For example, if you had a company and you wanted to set up a 401k for your company, you can do that. The SEP is really designed for somebody who is self-employed, has some type of revenue from a business that they want to contribute, because they're self-employed, they're allowed to contribute more than the maximum. But I want you to compartmentalize it. You don't contribute this the $58,000 max, and then you turn around and say, oh, I want to contribute another $20,000. You and that business are one and the same. That $58,000 is what you can contribute.
Right.
And if your number calculates saying that it's going to be, let's just say $65,000. If you're over 50, you can go ahead and use that catch up and contribute that $65,000 into there. But if you're under 50, you would be limited to the $58,000 for 2021.
yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Tell the birdie I said hi.
The dinner table, I'm trying to eat, listen. People are talking to me, and then the birdie's my husband, like,
That's great. Look, this is a family affair, and we want to make sure that everyone is educated and aware and has the information that they need. And, when you think about it, as Wendy mentioned, we wanted to kind of pivot from the last discussion we had, which talked a little bit about trust, and it was the beginning conversation around estate planning, but we wanted to pivot a little bit and really talk about retirement, because if you think about what goes into your estate plan, a lot of it is what your assets will be when you actually come out and retire. Because those are the funds that will go into whatever your generational wealth plan will be through your estate plan. We're going to talk about that next month. And it's so critically important for us, especially as Black women, because the reality is, even despite all of the challenges that we have in our community, all of the responsibilities and accountabilities that we have, reality is Black women still have a very high life expectancy. Currently it's at 78, which mirrors our white female counterparts. And the reality is, if we didn't have some of the challenges that we do have and the disproportionate healthcare access, we'd actually have a higher life expectancy rate. And so this is where we really have to step back. And like Wendy said it before, it's never too early and it's never too late to start saving for your retirement, whatever retirement is and however you define it. It really just means as you grow older and you mature, that you're able to live a life that's comfortable for you and allows you to leave something for those who you leave behind when you transition away from this earth. So we are thrilled about this journey that you ladies have engaged with us on. This is where, I guess, Adrienne, we're probably about halfway through at this point in terms of our sessions. And next month, we'll have Wendy back along with Tara Butler. I think you all remember we talked about taxes with Tara. And I always say these are two of the baddest Black women in the country, because they're two of the only Black females literally in the country who are honored enough and have put in the work to earn the title of wealth strategist, which is in the wealth management industry, you just don't come across Black wealth strategists, and certainly not Black female wealth strategists. And so I'm very honored to work with them day in and day out. And I'm thrilled that they have been so generous with their time to make sure that they're able to impart a lot of information that a lot of our clients pay a lot of money for all the time with you all, and hopefully continue on building this knowledge in this journey. Adrienne, thank you all for allowing us to partner with you. As Wendy said, it's a Friday evening and there are probably 20 other things you all could be doing other than sitting and having this conversation, but hopefully it was worth your time. You got some nuggets of information, and we're just going to keep on moving as we look to build your knowledge, your interests, and hopefully build a plan for creating generational wealth as we move forward in 2021.
So Tiffany and Wendy, we want to thank you all. And I just want to throw out the next dates again so that you all can mark your calendars. February 17th will be our next Wealth Building Wednesday session for women. And then also, based on popular demand and requests, on February the 5th at 6:30, we will now kick off an investment club. And that will be our Friday financial investment club for Spelman women. Our first session will be led by Jennifer McReynolds. And so I am looking forward to that, but we will actually put some of these things to practice. We will have different speakers that come in, but it's really an opportunity for us to learn, research different stocks and tips, and, do all the things that we've been talking about, so that it doesn't just, you're not sitting here on a Friday or a Wednesday evening just for fun. We really want to help our community build wealth. So with that, Thank you all. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you again next month.